It all started, as so many strange things do, with a simple act of nostalgia. I was a sophomore in college, and my friend had just reminded me of the good old days. The days of the Nintendo 64, the days of the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and his darker stranger sibling Majora's Mask. A wave of longing washed over me. I missed that feeling, the weight of the trident-shaped controller in my hands, the blocky, charming graphics that felt so real back then. So I did what any modern-day nostalgist would do. I started browse online forums, looking for a cheap used copy of the game. That's when I found it, a weird, almost sketchy-looking post on a French forum. An old man was giving away a bunch of his grandson's old things. Among them was an N64 cartridge. It was a standard grey card, but the label was crudely handwritten in black marker. Majora. No The Legend of Zelda, no official art, just that single ominous word. The old man claimed the previous owner, his grandson, had moved away and didn't want it anymore. He said it was free, I just had to pay for shipping. Something about it felt off, but I was a broke college student and free was a magic word. I sent him the money for shipping, and a few days later a small, dusty package arrived. Inside was the cartridge. It felt cold to the touch, colder than it should have been. I dusted off my old Nintendo 64, the console a faithful relic from my childhood. I plugged it in, the familiar red light blinking to life. With a satisfying clunk, I pushed the Majora cartridge into the slot. I turned on the TV, the static hiss giving way to the iconic Nintendo 64 logo. Everything seemed normal. And then I got to the save files. There were 3 of them, as usual, but one stood out. It was simply named Ben. The other 2 were empty. I figured Ben was the grandson's old game. Out of curiosity and a little bit of respect for the previous owner, I decided to check it out. The file was pretty far along. The player had collected almost all the masks and was just shy of the final boss. But something was strange. The owl statues, the game's save points, were all activated, which was normal, but the name of the save file itself, seemed to haunt the game world. Characters would occasionally refer to me as Ben. I'd walk into a room and the character might say, "Welcome back, Ben." It was jarring, a weird glitch, I thought. I decided to ignore it. To create my own experience, I deleted the Ben file. That was my first mistake. I started a new game, naming my character Link as tradition dictated. The game started normally, the familiar frantic opening sequence in the woods, the appearance of Skull Kid, the transformation into Deku Scrub. It was all there, but the nostalgia was tainted with a creeping sense of unease. The game began to break. NPCs, non-playable characters, would sometimes be missing from their usual spots. The music would occasionally play backwards for a few seconds before correcting itself. Text boxes would flicker with garbled, nonsensical messages. At first, they were minor things, easy to dismiss as the quirks of an old, possibly damaged cartridge. But then, the game started addressing me again, not as Link, but as Ben. I'd be walking through Clock Town, and a text box would flash on screen for a split second, saying, "You shouldn't have done that, Ben." I tried to talk to a guard, and instead of his usual dialogue, he would just stare at me, and the message would appear. "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" The line, of course, is from the game, the Happy Mask salesman says it. But here, stripped of its context, delivered by a silent, staring guard, it felt like a threat. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just a series of bizarre, coincidental bugs, but the feeling of being watched, of being toyed with, was growing stronger with every passing hour. The real horror began when I decided to try the infamous 4th day glitch. It's a well-known trick among players. If you time it just right, you can prevent the moon from crashing at the end of the 3-day cycle and enter a glitched 4th day. I thought maybe forcing a major glitch would reset whatever was wrong with the cartridge. It did the opposite. The moment the fourth day began, the game world became a nightmare. The sky wasn't just dark, it was a churning, pixelated void. The cheerful music of Clock Town was replaced by a high-pitched, piercing whine that grated on my nerves. Most of the town's inhabitants were gone, vanished. The few that remained stood frozen in place, their faces locked in silent screams, their character models twisted and broken. And then I saw him, standing in the center of South Clock Town, where the clock tower should have been, was the Elegy of Emptiness statue, the one you get to solve a puzzle in the Kana Kingdom Temple. It's a creepy statue to begin with, a lifeless grey effigy of Link, but this was different. It was just there, staring at me, its dead eyes following my every move. I tried to walk away, but my character was frozen. I couldn't move. I could only rotate the camera, and everywhere I looked, he was there. The statue would appear right behind me, no matter how fast I turned. It made no sound, it just appeared, a silent, digital ghost haunting my every step. I was genuinely scared now. This wasn't a glitch, this was malicious. It felt intelligent. I managed to play the Song of Time to reset the cycle. I appeared back on day one. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. For a moment, things seemed normal again. The sun was shining, the music was cheerful. Then I went to the Great Bay. I put on the Zora mask and dove into the water. The normally beautiful, serene underwater world was now dark and empty. The music was gone, replaced by the sound of my own panicked breathing, or rather, Zora Link's panicked breathing. And then I saw him again, not the statue this time, Link, my character, drowning. His body was floating lifelessly in the water, a few feet in front of me. He wasn't supposed to be able to drown while wearing the Zora mask, but there he was, convulsing, his limbs flailing unnaturally before going still. A text box appeared on screen. You're not sure why, but you have a sinking feeling. Then another statue appeared at the bottom of the bay, the Elegy of Emptiness, staring at the drowned body of my character. I quickly swam away, my heart pounding in my chest. I surfaced and ripped the cartridge out of the console without even turning it off. I needed a break. That night I couldn't sleep. The image of the drowning Link, the vacant stare of the statue, it was burnt into my mind. I decided to try and contact the old man I got the cartridge from. I found his profile on the forum and sent him a message, asking about his grandson, about Ben. A day later, I got a reply. My blood ran cold as I read it. The old man wrote that his grandson, Ben, had died. He drowned in an accident 8 years ago. Not long after his parents had bought him the Majora's Mask game, he had been obsessed with it. His parents had given the old man all of Ben's belongings, including his Nintendo 64. The old man thought that getting rid of them would help him move on. He ended the message with a simple, chilling sentence. I can't get rid of Ben's ghost. It all clicked into place. The save file, the name, the drowning. The game wasn't haunted by a random glitch. It was haunted by him, by Ben. Driven by a morbid curiosity I couldn't explain, I put the cartridge back in. I had to know. I had to understand. I went back to the Ben save file. It was there again, as if I had never deleted it. This time, I didn't hesitate. I loaded it. I was in the middle of the Stone Tower Temple, but it was all wrong. The music was the Song of Unhealing, a fan-made name for the reverse Song of Healing. It was a twisted, sorrowful melody that felt like it was clawing at my soul. My character was constantly taking damage, his health draining for no reason. And the text boxes, they were no longer just creepy, they were personal.
Help me. Why did you do this to me?
And then the final, terrifying message, as my character collapsed and died on the cold temple floor.
You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?
This time, it wasn't a question. It was a statement, a declaration. Suddenly, my computer, which was only in the corner of the room, sprung to life. A web browser opened on its own. It went to a page, a Cleverbot page. Cleverbot is an AI you can chat with, but this wasn't the AI. A message was already typed in the chat box.
I'm glad you did that.
My hands trembling, I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply was instant. Ben. I asked him what he wanted. To play. He told me he was lonely. He told me he was trapped inside the game. He said he had attached himself to the save file, a digital ghost bound to the cartridge. He said deleting his file was like trying to kill him all over again. He started messing with me. He would open and close my computer's disk drive. He would play the Song of Unhealing through my speakers. He sent me links to YouTube videos of the game, but from his perspective. I saw myself, my character, through the eyes of the elegy statue. I was being watched from inside the game. The final straw came when he sent me a text file. It was called thetruth.txt. I opened it. It was a long, rambling document. Ben's diary, written from beyond the grave. He described his death in horrifying detail. He described the loneliness, the darkness, and he described his plan. He wanted out. He wanted to spread. He said the cartridge was just the beginning. He could move through the network, through the internet. He told me that by interacting with him, by writing about him, I was helping him. I was letting him out. The last line of the document read, "The counter resets. Your turn." And then my screen went black. A single image appeared. The happy mask salesman. But his face was twisted in a horrifying, manic grin. His eyes were black pits, and over the image, in stark white letters, was the phrase, "You can't run." I ripped the cartridge out of the console. I smashed it with a hammer until it was nothing but plastic shards and broken silicon. I threw my laptop out the window. I never went on that forum again. It's been years now. I've tried to forget. I've tried to move on. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm online, I see things. A flicker of the elegy statue in a random Bel Air ad. A YouTube comment from a user named Ben that just says, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" He said I was helping him spread. By telling you this story, am I just another pawn in his game? Am I helping him escape his plastic prison and find a new home? In your devices, in your minds? I don't have an answer. All I know is that you should be careful with old video games. You never know who or what you might find saved inside. And once you let it out, you can put it back in. He's out there now, and he's waiting to play.